serious? What was something you saw you were definitely not supposed to see? My severance check. Apparently someone at the payroll company addressed it to me instead of HR, opened it at my desk and laughed, packed up my shit and left. So those reports you wanted at the end of the day, yeah, I decided I didn't want to do them. Also thanks for the severance check. I found a letter between my parents back when my dad was in the army 10 years before I was born. When cleaning out the house, he was saying how they should get a divorce because it just wasn't seeming to work out. When I was 16 they did end up getting a divorce. I've never talked to them about it. Edit. Phrasing. If it makes you feel any better, there was a time my husband and I talked about divorce. We were long distance and hadn't seen each other in about 8 months. That shit will wear on you. Leaving work late one evening, I saw the HR director and CFO in a dark office shredding papers. No, that's not an euphemism. I didn't say anything but quietly walked on down the hall. 2 weeks later we were raided by the SEC and several people were charged with cooking the books. Back in 1997, I started work at a new job and took over the office of a salesman who had recently been fired. I was in it, using the same computer that had been set up for sales. My first task was to install all the software I'd need. The computer hard drive was almost full, so I poked around and found a ton of folders filled with porn. Went to my supervisor, and he said to delete it, warning me that the salesman had been fired for downloading porn. Over the next few weeks, I kept finding secret porn folders onto the company's network. Not only had he downloaded enough porn to max out his computer's HD, he had the network at about 90% capacity. When I was done deleting all the folders I could find, the server capacity was less than 50%. Dude was seriously addicted to porn. I worked at a computer store in the late 90s and was always going out to contract sites to reinstall Windows when an employee left was let go. I'm surprised they wouldn't wipe and reinstall Windows on this desktop after firing someone. This makes me feel a lot better about browsing Reddit at work. All they'll find on my computer is some tasty memes which they'll enjoy so much that all will be forgiven. Boss says you're fired for filling the hard drive with memes. Did he look at them? There's some tasty ones in there. Yeah, that's why security's here to rough you up a bit on your way out. Worked for a downtown metropolitan hotel for a long time, and I've seen a lot I wasn't supposed to see. Probably the worst was a kid with an old man. Checked this guy in at like 1 in the morning. Not uncommon because people travel to different times. But he was alone. Like an hour later he asked for something like a towel or blanket. Anyways, dispatched our runner to deliver it. After the runner comes to me and says he thinks something is wrong because he caught a glimpse of someone and the old guy was trying hard to block the entrance. Being that we were supposed to take stuff like human trafficking seriously, I asked our maintenance to cut his power so we would get a call to come up to try and fix the problem. He does and I go up with him to apologize for the inconvenience because the guy was also a tortilla member. Sure enough we hear a kid in the bathroom hiding. Tried to ask who the kid was and the old guy tried everything to shut us down from throwing his status around to bribing. Called the cops and let them deal with it. Edit. Didn't expect this to gain so much traction. Here's some additional info for people that have been asking. I don't recall the specific charge, or if I was even told so. Use your imagination. I don't know the age of the child. I only saw him briefly one time when the cops showed up. I don't know the age of the guy. This was in Southern California, as specific as I'd like to be. Just 2 days ago, at a community pool, A teenage couple who entered into the pool area went into the hot tub, stood up to stretch my legs and looked over to, well, sex in the hot tub. It was midday. I cringed pretty hard, but I laughed even harder when the neighborhood cop showed up. Hot tub sex is a bad idea. That water is filled with chemicals and no good for the vagina. Sex in any pool of water is no good. The water takes away any lubrication, natural or synthetic. And X200B, shower 6, on the other hand. My wife and I have tried pool sex and the lack of lubrication is maddening. Oral, yes. Intercourse, harder than I imagined. And yes, the health risks are not worth it. I once arrived early to pick up a girl for a first date. She was renting a small garden apartment behind a bigger house. It was just after dusk and I walked around the corner. The sliding door was standing open and she was inside walking around, brushing her hair, wearing only her underwear. She did not see me, so I just walked back around that corner and waited another 10 minutes. When I walked round again she had a dress on. I never told her. Edit. Since a few asked. The date went well. I only got to see her underwear again several weeks later. You have to be careful later when she asks, "Want to see my underwear?" that you don't say, "I already have, thanks." I was downloading a game on my uncle's computer, so I was looking for the files to complete the setup and I clicked on a file called games. Few videos popped up, so the curious girl that I am, I clicked on one and there was it. A Chinese girl literally fucking her couch. That was my first porn experience. I was 7 and my sister was 5. And it doesn't stop there. We decided to show our mom. I'll never forget the trauma on her face. When I was about 16, I was snooping in my parents' wardrobe, found a diary written by my mother when she was 14, from the year 1970. Read some beautiful and brilliantly written entries about meeting and dating my dad, who was 16 at the time. Had to read a little between the lines in some slightly later entries as they were written with such flowery language. In one such entry, all of a sudden she discloses that she's had an abortion, performed by my grandfather, an anesthesiologist. She never told anyone. I was in elementary school playing basketball. I shot the ball but it ended up going over the fence. On the other side was someone's backyard. My teacher requested that after school I knock on the door of the house where the ball had landed to get it back, and so I did. I did not expect a woman wrapped in a towel with one of her nipples revealed to answer the door. I was shocked but carried on with my mission. For those wondering, she stated she did not have the ball size. So you didn't get the fucking basketball back then? Jesus Christ to me. Update. I don't think she knew she was revealing anything, or at least that's what elementary me thought at the time. I can't help but feel that it was quite irresponsible for a teacher to ask an elementary school student to go to a stranger's house without adult supervision. David Copperfield's show. I was at an angle that allowed me to see the volunteers running out from the stage during a disappearing act. What incentive did she or anyone have not to turn him into a laughing stock right then and there? Was there a reward after the show? Or was there a time in history when trolls did not rule the earth? David is a top tier entertainer and would just flip the script for it to be a funny moment. Your questions also imply that he's not 100% prepared for something like this to happen. He's been doing this since the 70s. YouTube webpage. Here's a good example of him working on the fly. He's expecting someone to have an important Belize earring to use like a wedding band. But the woman shows up with what is essentially a worthless souveniring from a trip to San Francisco. He gets a good laugh because it's not really important. and buys a few more seconds. Why is he asking her so many questions? Because he's got a team of professionals rummaging through probably thousands of rings in case wedding band isn't what he's given. He gets a detailed description of it. Where's it from? What's it made of? What kind of gems are those? Get a close-up shot of the entire ring so they can see it. Edit. He's buying time. Then they have from when he covers the hourglass until the end of the trick to get an hourglass with that ring to him and put it back on the table. He's not just a pro. He's the pro. You're not gonna troll him. Final edit. After going through everyone's comments, suggestions, and observations, here's how I think the whole trick worked while using the real ring the entire time. Prep. The table David is standing behind hides an assistant. They arrive from under the stage so nobody can see them approach nor anyone sees their feet while they bring the table out if they were to just hide under it the entire time. The floor is checkerboard style so hiding a door in the pattern is pretty easy. The table is also nearly see-through. There's only a thin center leg holding the entire thing up. It's possible that a real thin assistant is able to crawl inside this leg as well. They would only need to reach up with an arm to swap hourglasses. Assistant has a duplicate trick hourglass that can separate in the middle but still allows sand to flow. The hourglass on the table is a real one. No point in risking the volunteer possibly seeing the break between the glass or being overly curious and accidentally pulling it apart somehow while inspecting it. Trick. The ring gets threaded by the ribbon and is shown to actually be on it. At this point, he either does a really great sleight of hand to get the ring off the ribbon. The ribbon has a magnet in it to stick to the bottom of the box when seated, or the ribbon just sticks to the pinch string setting of the box. I'm leaning towards magnetic ribbon. Less possibility of just slipping out. It also doesn't require serious sleight of hand before putting it into the box. He holds the ring in a manner that either doesn't reveal that it's already off the ribbon or so that the magnet, if there is one, is in a specific place so that it can properly stick to the box. Once the ring is seated in the box, David shows it to the audience one last time, turns the box around, thumbs the ring into his palm, closes the now empty box, and slides his hand down, with the ring, off the ribbon. At this point, everyone is watching the box while he continues to move his hand downward and drops the ring off to the assistant. The assistant now has the trick hourglass and the ring. They set up the ring on the hourglass and wait for David to cover the one on the table so they can quickly swap it. David is making a show of the empty box with a ribbon sticking out of it to give the assistant as much time as possible to get the ring on the hourglass before the swap. The assistant's cue to get ready is when David picks up the hourglass and places it on an exact spot where the assistant can reach it. He lifts the blue cover, the assistant does the swap, and now David covers the trick hourglass with the ring already on it. A little flourish of moving the ring from the box to the hourglass and reveal. Edit 1. So after a few other comments, I've come to the conclusion that my assessment of how the trick is done is incorrect. Johanskasm 777 brings up that it's the same ring the entire time, and realistically, that makes way more sense than having a few seconds to find any number of rings that could be brought up. More reasonably, uBlues 2019 Cup Champs explains that it's a trick hourglass where the real ring gets mounted. The ring is also removed from the rope before it's placed in the box. David deliberately holds the ring where the rope meets it as to not reveal that, when the ring is in the box, it's sitting on top of the rope. Then, he palms it as he turns the box around. He doesn't close the box for everyone to see but only after he's turned it around. Then, he covers the hourglass up long enough so that someone under the table can grab the ring, the trick hourglass, mount it, and place it back where it should be. Edit 2. A lot of people are asking about the ring off the rope. This kid uses a magnetic rope, but I think the trick hand technique is essentially the same. YouTube webpage. Edit 3. So a few more enlightening comments have come in. Upinoid suggests that the ring is on the rope the entire time and David takes it off by bringing it down the length of it after he closes the box. It's very obvious now after watching it again. And Ujakinator21 points out that the rope might be magnetic, sticking to the inside of the box. This explains why David holds the ring rope the way he does. It needs to be in that exact spot because the magnet is tiny. Once it's in, the ring is flipped palmed by David and dropped to an assistant under the table. My initial comment was to show that David knows how to entertain and keep the show going even if he gets a curveball. I got sidetracked into the trick. Sorry for the incorrect information. It wasn't my intention to mislead. Thanks to whoever gave me gold in my attempt to explain the trick, but I don't deserve it. You think that trick was done with a team of ring experts digging through boxes of stunt rings to find an exact match for a piece of costume jewelry, then running the ring through a tunnel to give to him, rather than a little sleight of hand and an hourglass that can come apart and go back together? Just to clarify, without spoiling, it's not a second ring he's using. He's actually using her ring during the entire act. The trick is you get people who are really enthusiastic to come on stage. They're helpful, they're willing, they're friendly, and X200B. They're on stage, they're in the show. They are with a bunch of strangers, in front of a crowd, part of a big production. And the guy in charge is telling them what to do, in a very short time. It's exciting. And the social pressure, both conscious and unconscious, is immense. You go with the flow and probably don't even realize what is happening. And X200B. This is a super old trick to cold reading and stage magic. Finding helpful, enthusiastic people. For one, trolls are not, generally, going to pay to show up. For another, when you ask for volunteers, you can get a good look at everyone to see who is thrilled witless and who will go along with it. And X200B. It's one of those things where everyone presumes they'd have the inner strength to avoid or call out, but generally, the tide of that kind of staged situation is just incredibly strong. I had to use the bathroom while at one of his shows, and came out just in time to see everyone running down the hallway. David waved at me. David Copperfield here. Immediately delete this post or you will be hearing from my lawyers. Back when I was a teenager, we hosted a New Zealander at our house for a couple weeks. Guy gets to our place after the flight, and about 10 minutes later I'm walking around my house to see where he's at. The door to his room is partially open, and the dude is laying face down on the bed and humping the ever-living fuck out of a pillow. I backed away slowly like Homer when he saw Apu cheating on his wife. I felt bad for the pillow. Edit. For all of you asking, no, it was not a wool pillow and it didn't resemble a sheep. As a New Zealander, I apologize to you and the pillow. What the actual fuck? Holy shit. I walked in on a similar situation last year. Was staying at a hotel with a friend and her boyfriend, and I walked into the hotel room and found the boyfriend viciously humping a pillow while the girlfriend was in the bathroom getting ready to leave. Had the exact same reaction you did, just quietly retreated back into the hall and blacked it out. My mom gave me an old laptop of hers when I was about 13 and I was scrolling through random pics she had left on it of my little brother's football games and then boom, nudes of my mother. Around 3 years ago I met my wife's, then GF, mother. She was scrolling through pics she wanted to show me of my wife and then boom, her titty pics. She had had reduction surgery. She was embarrassed but we all just joked about it. Bonus story, I've also seen her sister scantily dressed for her profile pic of some odd sex stuff she's selling. And that was on purpose. My wife was there. Bonus story, my wife accidentally painted the word dildo on my mill bed. So I guess we're somewhat even. I went to my ex-wife's best friend's wedding in Slovakia. Then a few weeks later we were visiting them where they lived, in the UK. And they had a party where they were showing all the wedding pictures that they themselves had taken. It was obviously the first time they had looked at them, what with the honeymoon and all the official photos, because in the middle there was some of the bride very naked. My wife accidentally painted the word dildo on my mill bed. Do you care to elaborate? I'm trying to logic this and I can't. We were house sitting for them. Around the time of Valentine's Day, my wife was working on my gift. It was a sheet she'd drawn on that said some kinky stuff. It was game of sorts that involved choosing the written word like rolling sex dice. She decided to work on it and used her mom's bed to put the sheet on while she drew with those glue paint type thing. Obviously, since it was a present for me, I wasn't involved. My wife went to work and then realized her mom was coming back from vacation early. So she told me to go ahead and grab the sheet and put her mom's bed back together. I wasn't thrilled with this whole thing, but the cherry on top is that I went to remove the sheet, the paint had bled through onto their mattress pad. Most of the words were illegible, but you know what was super visible? Dildo. Nice and clear. I'm just like, IDK, how to fix this? So my wife made me cover it up, which I was against because I'm over 30 and not really down with hiding shit, but I didn't want to have that convo. Guess what? Her mom noticed. We all laughed about it. They bought a new mattress pad and gave us their old one. Awkward as fuck. Years ago a colleague had an old smartphone that he brought in to give to another coworker as theirs broke. The phone was sitting on the new owner's desk, but she hadn't yet tried it out, as it was still charging after months of not being used. We were talking about how cool it was with the coworker. Smartphones were not widespread yet, and I picked it up to see how it felt in my hand. I pressed a button and the first thing that I saw was a Google search for lump on anus. I quickly put the phone back down. This must have been the last thing he searched for when he last used it a long time ago, and forgot about it. This is why I use incognito mode to Google the gross things about my body. No, hey, can I borrow your phone to Google something sweats? When we first started dating, my now husband lent me an old phone because mine broke. First thing I saw when I went to text him was a load of really soppy lovey-dovey messages between him and his ex. That I didn't mind seeing because she was ancient history by that point, but I still felt guilty I'd seen something so personal without permission. When I was 11 I walked into my mum's bedroom and saw my mum and her husband doing a 69. We never spoke about it. Years later when I was 24 she walked into my bedroom and saw my BF naked with a boner. We never spoke about that either. If porn has taught me anything now that she's seen it, she was either going to three-way with your or bang him herself. Sounds like the three-way didn't happen, so I got bad news for you. My dad's chips. Learned it's why my parents got divorced. Proud of him for being in recovery though. Damn dude, a divorce would usually make alcoholism way worse. Your dad is strong. Me and a friend snuck away from a house party at 2 AM once. We wanted to go to this local abbey. We were exploring the grounds and generally having a nice time when we see two cars stop nearby. Instinctively we hid in some bushes and witnessed what was clearly a large drug trade. We definitely were not supposed to see that. We waited for them to finish their business and then we headed back to the party. Happened to a friend of mine. She was dating this dude forever. They broke up and he moved out. She was devastated. About a month later she was cleaning out old stuff and found a receipt for a ring that he had bought for her and never given her. That's how she found out that he had once intended to propose, before he fell out of love with her. She was hurt pretty bad about that. That happened to me. I can tell you it isn't a lot of fun for the guy either. The day I returned that ring was not great. Better than them actually getting married when he doesn't really love her. Poor thing. I found invitations to my big surprise 18th birthday just lying on the floor a few weeks before the event. I had to act surprised when the time came to walk through the door to the party, which I did. The only thing is, my twin brother also knew, which I didn't know at the time. And let's just say his acting skills are really bad. So we both found out in different ways about the surprise party, but neither of us knew that we found out about it. So when I walked through the door for the surprise, I could tell from his reaction that he knew. Happened the opposite way for me. For some reason I never put the pieces together to know it was my 18th birthday surprise party. I overheard my mom calling a relative and telling them to come to my aunt's house on the weekend. I asked why and she said because we haven't seen them in a while. A friend of our family told me see you on Saturday. I asked when and she told me maybe we can hang out that day. I arrived on Saturday with my family. We had brought extra chairs for the guests. I fucking took the chairs inside from the car. I noticed several cars parked outside. I noticed balloons in the front door and wondered why they were there. When I got in, and everyone said surprise, I was genuinely surprised, and my family burst out in laughter thinking how could I possibly not have known if they did a terrible job hiding it. Not my brightest moment, but party was fun. I watched Ens try to resuscitate my dying mother. IDK how to tell stories well, and this is something I have tried to repress and never really talked about at all. So please bear with me. We were swimming at this place called Cecil's Backyard Water Park. Labor Day weekend. Lots of drinking and partying. My mom was one of the people drinking that day. Last place we saw her, she was in the water drunk. My aunt, her sister, was making food for everyone, and when she finished, she noticed my mom wasn't there and started to worry. We started looking for her but we couldn't find her. We searched bathrooms, ditches, woods, etc. Panic started to set in for our group. 15 minutes passed and I hear someone found her. I turned around, managed to witness a man pulling her from the water. They performed CPR. EMS and police shortly arrived and tried to save her but couldn't. It's crazy how this one event in my life, an hour of my time, changed everything. About the location. We were at this where some guy literally dug up a big hole and filled it with water. He charged admission for people to enter and it was quite a popular place. 100 plus people on a busy day. As a kid you don't think much of it, but the place was a recipe for disaster. A lot of drunk adults, no lifeguards, and deep waters. We had been there plenty of times, so we felt safe. And X200B. Writing this was pretty hard, but I never talked about it, so I felt I should just write something to a bunch of faceless people on the internet. Thank you for editing and I am sorry for any grammatical errors I made. And X200B. Edit. Thank you for silver, and thank you to everyone commenting kind things. I really appreciate the kindness. This must have been terrible for you. You are brave to face that memory and share it with others. I hope you and your family are doing okay. I will say a prayer for you and your mother and your family today. That sounds like a really horrific, traumatizing experience to go through, especially for a kid, to lose your parent in such a disturbing way. I hope you'd consider reaching out to a mental health professional who can help you process this trauma and heal in whatever way you can. I'm so sorry for your loss and I hope you find some peace. Saw my parents having sex. Scarred me for a good 4 years and I forgot about it until you decided to make me relive the pain. As a kid I saw the scene from Poltergeist where the clown pulls the kid under the bed. My entire bedroom was filled with clown pictures and toys. I was upset. My mom decorated my room in clowns when I was little and thankfully my dad made her take it all down. They were all ultra creepy. A few years ago a girl asked to charge her phone off my laptop. For some reason she granted the laptop file access and whatever the macOS iPhone or import is called downloaded every single picture. Been 6 years since I used a Mac. This downloaded 400 pictures onto my hard drive without me learning about it until a week later or so. Many of them were sexually explicit Snapchats, mostly from guys. So I deleted everything and reformatted the hard drive to be safe. It was all unwanted, and the last thing I needed at 16 was to be harboring a bunch of nudes of my classmates. Back in the day, I would try to download anime episodes and clips off of P2P services. This was either days of Kaza, before people widely recognized that P2P programs were hives of illegal porn. And I'm one of the kids who was introduced to all sorts of disturbing stuff this way. The worst, though, was a small clip of a crying girl, late teens, 20 at the most. It was only about 10 seconds long. But at about the 6-second mark, about the time I was sighing and saying ugh, of course this isn't Goku, someone shot her in the head. I hadn't even noticed the gun at her temple until her skull was shred to pieces. Every once in a while, I remember that, and it makes me wonder who she was, who mourned her, and what sort of sick person films that. Edit. Lots of folks are saying the video might have been a fake, even a well-known one. I sure hope so. 10-year-old me didn't know that. Of course, it didn't mess with me too badly. But I never got the thought of how blood in the movies is never quite a dark enough red out of my mind. I look back as the first childhood generation with access to the internet. It's incredible how our parents underestimated the power of the internet and assumed it would never take off. This led to a ton of scarred children and teenagers discovering that people from all over the world were capable of sharing absolutely fucked up videos before the www and page 2ps were more regulated. I'm right there with you. I saw so much shit when I was a kid that I shouldn't have. We're the rotten.com generation. Watching Faces of Death videos at 12 because of morbid curiosity. A rotten.com, that site made me immune to losing my appetite on seeing anything disgusting. I specifically remember the guy cooking and eating a baby. I am literally on the front porch of a former rotten.com employee as I type this. His job was researching content. Think I was around 9-10 when one of my neighborhood friends pulled up Rotten on their family computer in the living room. My first introduction to the bathtub soup lady and pics of a sailor's grey matter splattered across the flight deck after getting clipped by helicopter blades. Oh holy hell, I might have seen this video as well, or a similar one. For a short time in my teenage years I used to hang out with two older guys, because they could buy booze and sometimes had pot. We met for a small LAN party, playing Diablo 2 cooperative. After some hours of playing and drinking a bit, luckily not too much, the two started watching snuff videos. People getting beaten up and accidents and stuff. Their highlight was a video that matches your description. They discussed if it was real and had great fun with it. I was so distressed I had to go puke. Afterwards I immediately called my mum to come pick me up. I never met with them again. After some hours of playing and drinking a bit, luckily not too much, the two started watching fluff videos. People getting beaten up and accidents and stuff. I believe you meant snuff videos. I remember that video and I was really shocked. I think she was shot with a revolver or some kind. I spent a lot of time afterward only to find it was an hoax. If I recall correctly, we would only see her sitting in a chair and I only remember some kind of yellowish walls. Oh geez, I saw that video when I was about 15. Freaking. I was shaking afterward cause I thought I just witnessed some poor girl get her brains blown out of her skull. Didn't realize it was fake until I saw all these replies from people who also watched it and found out it was a hoax. Yeah, freaked me out for a couple of days, but went back frame by frame because something seemed off. The more I thought about it and slowed down, you could see it was red paint getting thrown from off screen. Well done, but looking close it's paint. Happened when I was 7. I found the Tom and Jerry DVD I had lost in the back of the drawer. In celebration, I decided to watch it again. By the time my mother walked into the living room and saw me watching a threesome, I was already scarred for life. She took away the entire DVD collection. Similar thing happened when I was a kid, at my grandma's. She set me up in her adult stepson's bedroom while the adults upstairs did whatever I can't remember, and after looking through his movie collection decided on a Spice Girls VHS to keep me entertained. Turned out it was some Spice Girls porn parody, and when she came back to check on me she quickly realized and pulled the tape out. I think she was more scarred than I was. I was a very young and forgetful girl, so I don't remember anything specific about it other than it was really dirty. I'm lucky this didn't happen to me. The adults used to call my grandpa's collection his Disney movies and I always thought it was weird I wasn't allowed to watch them. It was a good thing I wasn't ever left alone to find out what they really were. What's the stupidest nickname we can come up with for the videos we don't want the kids to watch? I remember as a little kid I found a VHS tape with some naked ladies on the cover and asked what it was about. I was told it was a instruction video, but I needed to be older to watch it. I remember from time to time wondering about when I would be allowed to finally watch it, until I got old enough to understand what that VHS actually was. I had a similar thing. I was 12 or so and found a VHS tape that said Jumping Jack Flash. Put it in expecting a shitty Whoopi Goldberg movie but got MMF porn. That was a good day. I remember the Tom and Jerry movie DVD was silver with slightly less shiny lettering, making it nearly identical to a blank DVD and impossible to read. I get the feeling that's where the confusion came from. One time when I was around 9 years old, I woke up to take a leak in the middle of the night. I saw that the TV was still on in my parents' room through the tiny opening in their bedroom door. My bathroom's near my parents' room. I went to check up on them, and when I opened the door, my god, I can never erase what I saw. I saw my mom on the edge of the bed and my dad eating her out with all his might. I literally said, "Mama," and they didn't even hear me because they were so into it. So I just ran quickly back to my room. I remember the next morning, during breakfast, I asked my mom if there's any more juice left and she said, "There's no more. Your dad has the last cup of juice," and then my dad said, "You can drink the rest of it if you want." He offered his cup of juice to me and I looked at the rim of the cup and already felt sick to my stomach. I'm 20 now and I still can't believe I remember seeing that. TLDR. Saw my dad going to town on my mom in the middle of the night. That sucks. At least it was your parents loving pleasuring each other. In retrospect, I'd rather have walked in on that than knowing now of their dead bedroom and the subsequent cheating and breakups. Also, yeah, I'd never drink after my dad again. That's fucking gross. This makes me realize there's probably a time where all kids have done this, unknowingly. I don't like this thread anymore. I'm sorry for your mental scars, but this has me fucking rolling. It sounds like something straight out of a raunchy comedy. Dude, right? When I was reading it I even got the slow zoom in on the juice cup with the music and the dad's distorted voice saying have some ice, soon. This is why I always lock the door before getting intimate, and we try not to be super loud. Growing up sharing a wall and eating vent with my parents' bedroom, once I was old enough to understand the sounds I had to wear headphones and blare music to sleep. I'm glad my parents love each other. Together over 40 years now. But I never wanna have my kids subjected to my husband and I's private activities. He offered his cup of juice to me and I looked at the rim of the cup and already felt sick to my stomach. I'm sorry, dude. That is the part that had me cracking up LMAO. My supervisor plowing an operator in the ass in the work showers. He just looked at me, then looked back at dude's head and started going for broke. I left. None of us ever acted like it happened. I've worked in construction and never met an attractive operator or supervisor on a construction site, so I'm just imagining a couple of leathery old men going at it. I hate you for this. I know he said they were in the shower, but I imagined them wearing hard hats. Can we get a show of hands for everyone that imagined them wearing hard hats in the shower? I'm imagining Vito from The Sopranos getting penetrated. Ramadan's coming up next week and I think I just found a way to stay chaste the whole time. He just looked at me, then looked back at dude's head and started going for broke. Dude fucked up. You're supposed to maintain eye contact to establish dominance. Amateur. A guy taking a shit under a bridge. What really freaked me out is that he probably walked around the rest of the day smelling vaguely of shit. I still think about it sometimes. Come to Mumbai. Here you can see hundreds of them sitting on the railway tracks. You need to take the early morning trains for this scene. Walked in on my ex-girlfriend's sister but naked, bending over, with her asshole in full display. The salaries of everyone working at the company I was working at, it was a smaller, startup digital ad agency with about 60 employees total, and someone from HR was making copies of a document that listed everyone's salary, and left the original on the glass of the copier. I found it, and turned it back in, but not before I went through that list to see what everyone else made, and discovered that a couple new hires working the same position as me were making more than me. So after turning it in, I met with my manager and used my newfound knowledge to my advantage to successfully negotiate for a raise, along with a tacit promise that I wouldn't divulge what I knew to anyone else in the company. Along with a tacit promise that I wouldn't divulge what I knew to anyone else in the company. Unspoken extortion. Nice. I mean both parties win. Guy got a pay raise and the company keeps its information private, though they could see him as a risk and look to replace him sooner than later. Happened to me one. I was bored. So was browsing through the network shares on a PC we used to store machine recipes. Found a spreadsheet with everyone's pay details, overtime etc. So I emailed the ad guy and told him it probably should be at least passworded, and for my trouble I was threatened with being fired for hacking. Nice. So this reminds me of a friend from college. We were all CS people and in our last semester, my friend was looking at his grades in an online thing in one of his classes. He noticed that his student ID number was somewhere in the URL, so he asked his friend what his ID number is. After replacing his own ID number in the URL, it showed his friend's grades. Well, they tested it one more time to make sure that it wasn't just a fluke, and then he reported the vulnerability to our school's department. Well, within a few days, he got an email from the dean's office telling him he now has to go to a meeting with the dean for academic dishonesty and prove his case for why he shouldn't be expelled the semester that he graduates. That poor guy was a wreck for the week before he had to meet with the dean. Obviously he didn't really do anything wrong, but to them, he was just a guy who figured out how to look at other people's grades. And we also knew a bunch of the people that worked in the ed department cause we were CS students anyway. It was ridiculous how they didn't make it a first point to say, oh hey, he just brought it to our attention so we could fix it. Instead of, oh hey, this dude was looking at other people's grades. But luckily it all turned out alright. I think he had to write an official apology letter or something to the school and students whose grades he'd looked at, which since they were his friends and they didn't care, it was thoroughly pointless. I wish this kind of stuff wasn't so taboo in the US. Everyone should get their salaries out in the open unless they explicitly don't want anyone else to know. It benefits not just them in negotiating a better salary, but their co-workers as well. The only party that loses out is the company, and if they're having trouble with salary, there's bigger problems beneath the surface. All public teachers' salaries are listed online, at least for Illinois. Found out my orchestra teacher is making over $100K. I saw my mom giving my dad a blowjob, but it was on a video on his phone. That's pretty cool. At the same time though, your mom and dad aren't cheating in a loveless marriage or any of that BS. They're literally spending life together as nasty as possible, mayo. One of my professors made a similar point recently. She basically said, don't we all kind of secretly hope our parents are having sex? Like obviously we don't want to think about it, but we want them to be happy, and that's part of a happy marriage? Agreed. I never even saw my parents kiss, so I kind of thought they didn't love each other at all. Apparently they got it on pretty often, but were really good at keeping it on the DL. I never saw my parents kiss either. They also slept in different beds just to keep up the charade. They were so committed to hiding their affection for one another that eventually they even got divorced and moved into separate houses. This is so true. My parents make sexual comments to each other in front of us all the time. My dad also asked me to put his pics from his phone onto my computer, and there were pics of my mom's butt in underwear while she was sleeping. As uncomfortable as that is, I can honestly say my parents love each other. Side note, they started dating at ages 15 and 16 and are now 52 and 53, 37 years and counting. My husband accidentally sent a group family text telling everyone that I was his nasty little princess and was going to get a spanking. I was so embarrassed, but my dad was much like you. He responded with #relationships. LMAO, I remember seeing a picture of my parents doing the same thing. That's how I learned not to go through people's phones. This happened in reverse for me. I was 21 or so, and had a video of my boyfriend, now my husband, and I having sex on my phone. My parents, who were prone to violating my privacy on a regular basis, looked through my phone, found it, and I'm pretty sure that will be the last time they ever go through anyone's phone ever again. I came home from working my second job to my now ex-wife having sex with some guy in our house. Did this except I stopped home on a break and had to go back to work almost immediately. Edited to explain why I had to go back to work. I was working 2 jobs and caring for my newborn while my wife was busy being a garbage human being. She's my ex-wife now but still garbage. She moved to Florida and upholds the stereotype. Anyway, I already knew she was garbage and had already been figuring out how to extricate myself from the relationship, while making sure that my child was cared for. When I came home it was a brief unofficial stop because I found myself in the same neighborhood, not because I was actually on break. I needed the money too much and was so sleep deprived at the time that I couldn't do anything but file it away as a problem for future me. I don't think I ever even brought it up after the fact. Anyway, I joined the military, divorced her, got custody of my child, led a pretty kick-ass life while she did meth, I guess. This is what I did. I came in the front door and caught a peek of my mate nailing my girl. I left early to surprise her with Chinese food. OBV, I broke up with her, but nothing will erase that memory. I hope this isn't insensitive, but how does this even happen? Anytime I ever read something like this on Reddit, my mind is always kinda blown. Like the secrecy and cover-up involved just seem mind-blowing to me. It doesn't make any sense. Who are these people that don't understand boundaries and would try something with their friends SOS? Isn't that insanely risky in the first place? And who are these SOS who just allow it to happen? It seriously blows my mind. Sorry this happened to you, buddy. Hope you're okay now. Edit. A word. I feel for you. I came home from work early to find my fiancé loudly fucking my friend's girlfriend. As in I could hear them from down the street. Suffice to say I was unamused. We split up shortly after. My friend and his girlfriend also did the next day. Under a month later she moved in with a different long-term male friend of mine. Classy. She still to this day doesn't understand why nobody trusts her and why she doesn't get invited to anything anymore. I think some people only find value in things other people value, like it's a form of insecurity or something. Krieger. Me too. Krieger. Except that it wasn't my second job. It was my only job, and we'd only been married like 4 months. That was a fun divorce. A bit boring, but I found an engagement ring in a closet 6 months before my boyfriend popped the question. In those 6 months I kept going back to the closet to put the ring on my finger and admire it. Props to your boyfriend for being able to keep the ring for more than 6 months before proposing. The day I had the ring in my hand, it took everything within me to not pop the question on the spot anytime I saw my girlfriend. It's very difficult. Had mine for 1 year, knew it was going to happen, but was waiting for our Eastern Asia trip to do it. So I had it custom built for a few months and then stored it at my parents' house so she wouldn't find it, cause she would if it was at our house. Then traveled through multiple countries before doing it. Not sure how, but she had no idea. My story is sort of the same, but I had it for about 2 months and I left it at my best friend's house. He had it literally up until we set up our campsite after hiking for about 4 or 5 hours. She knew it was coming but had no idea that I had the ring already since we were a bit strapped for cash at the time. She thought it would have been another 6 or 7 months until I asked. This is like the only response in this thread that's actually sweet, haha. When I was a young teen I was once leaving my house to go do something in the neighborhood. As soon as I got out of the door I heard my parents at the garage. My mother seemed to be in her car, and my father was sitting down behind her car, and pleading with her not to leave. My parents were divorcing, and I saw a few scenes that I wish I never had. Not really horrific, but seeing your parents in emotional pain can be rough. That's rough. That reminds me of me walking out into the hallway and seeing my dad hit my mom for the first time when I was like 10. I couldn't sleep and I've always been a mama's boy and heard her crying. She was on the floor and my dad had a most evil glare in his eye. I just ran back to my room scared and cried for my mom. I can't even tell you how many fights I saw between my parents. I'll never forget waking up one night when I was like 5 and hearing muffled voices coming from the bathroom. I get up, go in and see my dad in the bathtub and my ma sat with her leg in the tub too. Blood everywhere, both arguing over who should go to hospital. They'd been drinking and gotten into a fight. Dad went to kick my ma but ended up standing on a pint glass and slicing up his foot. Ma had a massive gash down her shin. Being a referee to 2 grown adults fighting as a young kid will leave you with some long-term emotional issues. I know that much. Seeing your parents in emotional pain can be rough. I was raised by my grandparents and was, for all intents and purposes, their 11th child. My uncle committed suicide when I was 12. It was the second child they'd lost, but the first death I was alive for. Hearing my grandmother break down and fall to her knees sobbing uncontrollably and seeing my otherwise stoic and rather emotionless grandfather's shoulders move because of how much he fought to control his sobbing is something that I haven't been able to scrub from my memory in 29 years. Those moments are as clear as any other memory I have. When we're young, we tend to think of our parents as a lot more than they really are. As a parent now, I've learned just how wrong I was and how good my grandparents were at reacting to their mistakes and the mistakes their children made. I owe so much of who I am to them. I saw my dad cry twice. Once when I graduated from college and he tried to hide it. Fucking adorable. The other time was when we had to put our dog to sleep. We both loved her so much and I'll never forget seeing those tears streaming down his face. He didn't hide them that time. We cried together. The code to open all the doors in my primary school at the time. A lot of power to open any locked door for an 8-year-old. I did theater tech in middle school, so they gave me a key to the theater so I could work on stuff when the building was closed. Only, it turned out that the key they gave me was a master. It opened any door in any building on campus built in the last 15-ish years. I told the assistant headmaster pretty much as soon as I figured this out, and he was cool with it since I was basically a responsible kid. But then, this one day, one of the faculty members locked himself out of his apartment and I let him back in. His wife was not pleased and that's the story of how I lost my ability to work on theater tech stuff whenever I wanted. Are there apartments attached to this middle school? I'm confused. Boarding school or something? My sister's nudes. Came across an old USB thumb drive and found screenshots of my sister nude video chatting. The pictures were dated around the time she was 15. Update with the deets. The thumb drive was in a pile of electronics we had stashed in a closet after we moved houses a couple years back. The pictures were screens of her video chatting with her then boyfriend and I remember seeing thumbnails mostly of her naked boyfriend with mostly screens of her feet on the upper right. Dunno if the guy was requesting feet stuff or if it was my sister's weird sense of humor, but if anything the pics were more of the guy than of her. I discreetly set the thumb drive amongst her things, as to not allow anyone else to stumble into it like I did. God forbid our sweet old parents open that drive. Edit 2. This was several years ago. I'm sure my sister found the drive and destroyed the evidence already. I have no way of confirming unless I ask her, which I don't. I found suggestive pics on my 15-year-old sister's phone when I was helping her fix something. Pretended I didn't see. I didn't want to shame her or anything. She has major body issues. Managed to work into conversation that dissemination of nudes underwear shots of someone under 18 counted as child porn a couple of days later. and that a friend of mine had her pics shared on the internet by her loyal 15-year-old boyfriend. I made sure she got all the info, just did it in a subtle way. She wouldn't have listened if I'd done it directly. Edit. I'm her older sister. Well played. I don't think it would be possible to handle that better than you did. Thanks. Teenagers are tricky, haha. Say one thing slightly wrong and boom, you fucked up big time. I do conventions and corporate events for a living. Was once called into a room to fix a power cable. It was a meeting of a worldwide well-known house paint manufacturer. It was a closed-door meeting and I had to be let in to do my job quickly. They didn't stop talking as I did my work. We've pulled all the units from production and recalled all units on the shelves, but the ones still in transit cannot be recalled. They might be caught when they reach the sales floor if the retailers are still watching the recall, but it will have been weeks since we issued it. The guy who then responds to that states that they can prove they did their diligence in court with the recall and any units sold to consumers will be the retailer's fault. I never did get to hear what the recall was for, but they seemed pretty tense over it, legally speaking, so I doubt it was quality control. I felt like I had witnessed the mafia talking about a murder. How long ago was this? It could have been an issue with lead in the paint, as it used to be a common ingredient. A while back someone posted a video of a father singing to his baby in the NICU after an emergency C-section. The baby had been taken out early because the mom has died unexpectedly overnight. The baby died shortly after. After I watched that, I felt like I had intruded on someone's private moment with their child, and that I was not supposed to see that. I filter the links I click on a lot more carefully now. I hope that man has found a way to begin his healing. Edit. For those asking, yes, it's the man singing Blackbird. Damn, that is rough. A local guy where I live lost his mother, wife and all 3 of their children in a bad car accident recently. They interviewed him during one of the court proceedings during the driver who didn't die and is being charged with DUI vehicle homicide. This was months later, maybe 6 or so. He was absolutely defeated. Where he was once a vibrant, proud young father, crushed me in a similar way as your story. If I lost my wife and kids, I'm not sure what reason I'd have to keep going. If I lost my husband and all my kids, I'd kill myself. No question about it. There's no reason to live without them. I've never been suicidal, but that would just take away any will to live. I've genuinely thought about what I'd do. I have thought I'd have to take steps to avoid suicide, because it would definitely be something a person would consider in that situation. When you have a wife and kids, your whole life revolves around them. It's the reason for waking up in the morning, the reason you go to bed at night. Gosh, this is so bleak and real to me. I plan on marrying the absolute fuck out of my girlfriend of 3 years, having children with her, buying a house, etc. And even now the thought of her dying during childbirth and then losing the child is devastating. I think one of the reasons why this is probably my biggest fear is because I know I wouldn't last long after losing everything that matters to me. Let's hope none of that will happen to any of us. Chances are remote. Do not even dwell on it. I got caught up in this thinking many years ago and it robbed me of time. Love the fuck out of her and love those kids and enjoy every second. You will be shocked at how time flies by, so you must enjoy it while you can. I live in Sri Lanka. We had a terrorist attack this past Easter. I've been involved with making an in memoriam page for the victims. It breaks my heart at how many entire families were killed. In one instance, only the father survived, but he lost both kids. In another, someone lost 3 of their 4 children. One family of 5 lost their mother. A grandmother lost her husband. daughter, son-in-law and 3 children. Sorry that my comment is off topic, but your reply just made me think about it again. It's so crushing and incomprehensible. I kind of hate videos and pictures like that sometimes. If everyone involved is cool with it, fine. But so many have almost no context. I know I'd hate for a picture of me and a loved one in a tender moment during death or whatever to be spread around the internet for any reason. Some things should be kept private. I don't care if it makes a great story and feel-good moments for total strangers. In many ways it's disrespectful. Reply all. Number 123, an ad for the worst day of your life webpage. There's a relevant episode of Reply All about a man whose wife died suddenly after childbirth. At the time, he coped by publishing a blog about his experience which went viral. But as he healed and raised his daughter, he moved on. But the problem is that hundreds of clickbait websites wrote little blurbs about his story, and everywhere he goes on the internet, he sees pictures of his dead wife in those little clickbait ads, saying things like his wife died, and what he did next will amaze you. 10 years after her death and he can't escape the ads for his own story, retold by shitty clickbait sites. An email from my dad's mistress on his computer. Mentioned it to my mum and that's when she told me my dad had been having an affair for the past 7 years and I have a half-sister because of it. Bad stuff. I saw a car get shot up one time. Good stuff. Discovering poorly hidden Christmas and birthday presents. I remember a huge feeling of exhilaration when I was a kid and stumbled on a birthday or Christmas gift hidden in a closet or something. Dude robbed a gas station. I was riding my bike in the back, saw him take off his mask and get in a car. We made eye contact. I turned my head and acted like I didn't see anything. When I was in my late teens, I was sitting with a friend in his car at a set of traffic lights about 3 AM on a quiet street in the city. At the next set of lights ahead, which was maybe 30 m away, I saw a guy walk up to the car waiting for the lights to change. He extended his arm and fired a shot almost point blank range at the passenger window, before quickly walking off. We sat there in shock for a minute thinking, did we just fucking see what we thought we saw, while the car sat there through 2 more light changes, before slowly rolling away. No other cars were on the street at the time. The next day I saw on the news some dude from a gang called the Assyrian Kings was shot in the head in a car and died right around where we were the night before. We never said shit about it to anyone as we decided we didn't want to get involved. Being paranoid teenagers. This happened to my friend a few years ago in the US. Quiet residential street, $1 million homes, in front of a brunch restaurant. I was 14 and on a walk with my mom. We were walking around a lake and decided to take a woodsy shortcut rather than having to walk out onto a state roads. The shortcut, like I said, is woodsy, but there's still some lake cabins and a dirt road back there. Anyways, we're going through on the dirt road and there is a car parked in the middle of it, not particularly close to any of the cabins. As we pass it by, we glance in the windows out of curiosity and see a 20-something girl and guy fucking in the back seat. When my mom realizes this, she quickly pushes me on ahead, which bummed me because I wanted to be a dick and tap on the window and wave hello with a big grin. Oh god, IDKY, but I just imagine this big dumb teenager just walk up and in the thickest country accent just say hello with this large dumb grin on his face. Hard drive failed on my dad's computer. The data recovery software did a pretty good job really, but I could have done without it recovering nude and lingerie shots of the various women he's been banging behind my mother's back over the years. While my concern is more with things like financial details etc., rather than secret cheating photos, This is basically the answer to my friend's question as to why I dismantled my HDD and smashed the plates to dust before burning it. We just chucked our hard drives out back and blasted them with 00 buck. Flash forward several years, I remember that I had a BTC wallet from back in the day with 30 or so coins. Cool. Very out of context, but could you tell me what software this was? I have 2 drives with important data that failed almost simultaneously. Yeah, no worries. It was RStudio web page. You download it, and it will have a look at your disk. It'll recover files up to 256 KB in size. This is kind of a look. I'm not a scam evaluation. If it's going to be able to recover your data, you then pay to unlock it. Having recovered data from many dead hard drives and arrays over the years, I can recommend RStudio, a little more in depth than most, but can handle exotic RAID configs like nothing else. If you're going to only ever license one package for recovery, get this one. Get data back NTFS fat simple, all you need most of the time. File Scavenger seems to have a bash at everything. It'll even recover files if they are partially corrupt, so you could still recover part of a document if needed. RAID Reconstructor, useful for generating images of more everyday arrays. Zero Assumption Recovery, another handy tool for recovering RAID arrays. Even if it won't get your data back, you can use the output and some technical know-how to work out how your array has been built and use that to better inform the settings you feed RStudio. Edit. Holy moly, Edit 2. Added by popular demand. DMDE. Their web page. Not tried it myself, but I suspect I will be in the next few weeks. Edit 3. Ditto 4. Photorec. Security web page. And I had forgotten. Test disk. Security web page. This was able to rebuild a FAT table on a very sick SD card a little while back. Edit 4. Extra pro tip. If you know you're going to have to recover data more than once, get yourself a desktop to plug drives into natively. Failing that, a USB to SATA, Lindy web page, adapter is a good second. I thought these comments were talking about RStudio as in the ID4R, and I was so confused. I most definitely was not supposed to see my sister's abortion paperwork, 20 years after, in a box in her old closet at the family home. Her business. I'll never ask her about it. I don't know what your sister's paperwork was like, but I had a miscarriage a few weeks ago and my paperwork only says complete abortion. No one except my husband knew I was pregnant, so no one knew I miscarried. But if anyone saw my paperwork, they would think I had an abortion. Also, sometimes it's necessary to undergo what is essentially an abortion procedure after a miscarriage, to remove the fetus. A woman might undergo dilation and curettage to end a pregnancy, or because the pregnancy had already terminated via natural processes. By the way, sorry for your loss. My wife and I had a miscarriage a few years ago. It was kind of remarkable how many women in our lives came forward to share their stories of lost pregnancy as well, when they heard. I don't know if I wasn't supposed to see this, as I can't figure out any reasoning behind this beyond maybe exhibitionism, though really I don't want to put exhibitionists in the same group as this couple because goodness gracious, I had a patient who was close to death and we called her daughter. She came and we set her up in the room to stay until her mother passed. She brought her boyfriend, which is not abnormal. I walked in to do my routine check and they were having sex on the cot that was set up for her maybe 15 feet from her dying mother. I mostly didn't want to see, so I am answering this wrong. The owner of the club where my sister worked took an armload of shotguns out of his truck. It was about 3 AM and I was parked behind a bar waiting for her. The reason I know he didn't mean anyone to see is because he covered them with a tarp and he gave a good long stare around when he got out. Shady fucker. He was up to every kind of no good. I literally scrunched down in my seat. As a gun owner, hunting rifles, shotguns. When I go out shooting and have even just one rifle or shotgun, I actually get anxiety about transporting in and out of my car. Gun safety is very important to me and I don't want people either knowing I own firearms or feeling unsafe that I own firearms. I'd rather just keep it to myself. Also agree with others that you never leave them in your car. I accidentally found someone's notice of performance improvement plan on our company open access SharePoint site. Went straight to my manager so they could quietly inform the manager of the person and have it removed. The person on the performance plan quickly became a top performer and closed the second biggest deal in the region not long after their manager was replaced. I used to work in the basement of a pretty large hospital doing engineering work. They'll often cart dead bodies out of the hospital through the basement, so it's usually not a big deal. You just tend to try and ignore it. One time as I was finishing up a test in a pretty remote room, I walked out to an entire security detail escorting a body. I just got immediately shoved back into the room, so nothing really exciting happened, but I always wonder who that could have been. I work in a major hospital and we service everyone from politicians to celebrities. It was most likely a well-known person or possibly a person from a hot news report that the media was focused on. Even if it was only a sheet and you couldn't see the body, the ordinary people, the reporters, and the paparazzi try their best to take photos. We have caught people pretending to be patients. We prevent ordinary people trying to sneak a picture, which can easily be sold or leaked. No matter how famous, in life or in death, a person is entitled to privacy and it is the hospital's responsibility to heal them and always protect their rights. About 5 days ago there was leaked photos of the deceased body of footballer Emiliano Sola, whose plane crashed in the ocean. Someone actually broke into the morgue to get them. Morbid. My third job I had, at 17, was at a pizza place. I had 2 managers, one male, one female, and they were both married to other people. Well, I went to hand in my drawer at the end of one shift and walked into the office, and there they were just making out with some heavy petting. Their spouses found out. They left their families, and then those 2 managers got married to each other. As far as I know, they're still together. Edit. I am getting a lot of people sending me messages that are insulting me for having my third job by 17. Like, wow, I didn't realize all you Redditors were so accomplished by 17. But my first job was tasseling. Like many other kids in my small Midwestern town. Then, I worked concessions at an outdoor pool. Once again, Midwestern town, so this outdoor pool was only open during the summer. So, then by 17, I needed another job, and thus, I arrived at the door of a Pizza Hut. Also no, I didn't tell their families. I was 17. I didn't even know these people's spouses. Their families found out, because they told them themselves. Because they both wanted divorces from their respective spouses. I tend to have a way of finding things out that I'm not supposed to due to my inquisitive nature, but one that comes to mind was when I left my last job. My general manager wasn't exactly a warm woolly person and was not pleased that I was leaving. I had to get something out of the manager's office and saw my name in an email on the desk. She had told the other 2 managers to wish me the best of luck in my future career and that I would be missed. I was shocked because she actually took the time to send that out to them. Never heard that from any of them. but seeing it showed that she actually cared. The most common reason people leave a job is they don't feel appreciated. If people like the work they do and the people they work with and feel they make a difference, they'll leave with less pay. Corporations seldom understand this. On my way to work in the morning on day and I'm on a train leaning up against a glass partition between two seats. The lady on the other side was doing the same, and as her mobile kept pinging with incoming messages, my attention was drawn to it, and because of the angle I could see the text exchange. To summarize, she offered services of the scatological nature, and the person on the other end was complimenting her on how her shit didn't stink when she curled one out on his chest. I definitely should not have seen that. You act like your shit don't stink. Well, I've been reliably informed that it doesn't. What everyone in my company made, salary-wise, CEO and all higher ranks included. It was a very detailed Excel file meant for the owners of the company. For every tier you went up, the salary pretty much doubled. We had this yearly festival at my school when I was in middle school. I was at one of the game tents with my friends and I saw the teen worker not so subtly hand another teen worker a bag of white powder. It happened pretty fast and no one else saw it, so I was kind of confused if I saw what I thought I saw. My friend told me the following Monday that our teacher caught the kids doing drugs after the festival. It was about a year after my mom passed away. So I was about 11 years old and my sister was 13. Her and I had a rocky relationship at the time, but we had our moments. When she was at a band competition on the weekend, I was dropped off with her. The time came when she had to perform, so she gave me her phone. I went through it. Being the nosy 11-year-old sister I was expecting to find some exciting 8th grader gossip or a secret boyfriend. But what I did find was not a laughing matter. I found dozens of self-harm pictures, bloody sinks and bloody words carved into my sister's skin. At the time, I didn't even know self-harm was a thing. I didn't confront my sister about the photos until years later. But I did immediately rethink all of our fights and how we were all hurting as a family. My sister and I are best friends now, and those photos did help me gain the perspective I needed to change our relationship, but they still haunt me. A nude pic of my stepdad. Also a court-ordered DNA paternity test for myself. Apparently there was one to determine if my dad was my dad. It was inside my parents' divorce papers. My dad claims he never took a test or asked for one. I never asked my mom about it. She is crazy, so for all I know she took his hair on toothbrush for the test. Who knows? My dad lies so he could have known. My eldest sister and her BF fucking. That's how I got my tickets to see Endgame. My sister, being raw-dogged by her boyfriend, burst into her room because we'd gotten home early and I wanted to say hello. I was 7 or 8 at the time. My brother accidentally once sent me a dick pic that was, I assume, supposed to go to one of his girlfriends, and X200B. We've never spoken about it, and I'm fortunate enough to have aphantasia, so I can't form mental images. The 0.3 seconds it took for me to delete it off my phone also deleted it from my brain. Can't form mental images? How does that impact your life? I mainly use patterns and pictures to remember more complex things. I couldn't imagine not being able to use that. I rely heavily on GPS even when going to places I've been before. I forget I've met people, and if I see someone, like a colleague, outside of the place I normally see them in the grocery store instead of at work, then I probably won't recognize them. Lists are a must because I forget everything. I don't remember many of the experiences I've had, and those I do remember aren't in first person. So, for example, My memory of my wedding is just a narrative I've told myself about it. I don't actually remember being there or how it felt. And X200B. Strangely, learning processes such as new computer programs or how to work machinery comes very quickly to me. But, on the flip side, I also forget it really quickly when I haven't used it in a couple of months, so my learning is never for life. And X200B. On the positive side, traumatic experiences don't stay with me emotionally, and I live completely in the present. This is fascinating, to be honest. As someone who frequently writes, I was imagining all the positives are in. You could read your own books and be surprised by the endings. In a way, you're the only type of person who can honestly evaluate yourself and your decisions with the least personal bias. Or you could have done some truly exceptional or remarkable things and forgotten. Imagine the secrets that could lay in your past. I've no doubt that this is exceedingly frustrating at times. But it sounds like you've done a great job of compensating, and thanks for sharing. I appreciate the new knowledge. I'm frequently surprised by my own writing, but mostly in a hey, this isn't complete trash kind of way. I've also learned to capitalize on my memory problems by doing things like hiding money in winter coat pockets during summer so future me gets a treat. It's the small things. I have it. For me it's kind of like when you look at something too bright and when you close your eyes you see the outlines. I can't see a picture in my head, but if I try I get sort of mental outline of the thing I'm thinking about. Like when you're in a dream and just know something without knowing how you know. Won a used laptop from my female friend in a bet. She had a bunch of nudes on it. Edit. A lot of people are asking what the bet was. I drank a pot of béarnaise for it. She was pretty drunk while making the bet, but I came around next morning to collect cause I didn't drink that pot of béarnaise for nothing. If anybody wants to know how to drink a pot of béarnaise, you just pretend it's soup. Also stop PMing me asking for the nudes. I deleted them as soon as I saw them. Who bets a laptop? Edit. To whoever gave me silver. I bet you my laptop you won't gild me. Edit 2. Fuck. Knew I should have asked for platinum. All my best nudes were on that laptop. Who cares about the nudes? What were the specs on the laptop and what did you have to do to win it? Back in high school my friends and I used to skateboard in a church parking lot. One day we're hanging out and this car comes tearing into the parking lot and drives over to a secluded corner. A lady gets out and goes to her trunk and pulls out a gun. We think she's about to shoot herself, but then she notices us standing there. She paced back and forth a few times before getting back in the car and leaving. As soon as she left, we went across the street to a convenience store and called the police. My soon-to-be ex-wife, who told me she was with a female friend, went out for a drive and happened to see her drive past in the passenger seat of her car with a man at the wheel. I was about 10 or 11. My sister was with this guy. He was really abusive, and they had 2 kids. I was playing with my little niece in front of the TV and I looked up and saw his porn mags piled up on the stand. Not even hidden in plain view. Another time I was in their garden and I saw pot plants growing in their shed. Later I found out that he was sexting 15-16-year-old girls. My sister knew everything and did nothing. Edit. It's a really long story but I'll outline the key parts. She got away from him. My parents got her a new house after he tried to kill her. He tried to attack her with a knife. Mom and dad went to their house in the middle of the night and snuck her and the kids out and they stayed with us for a year. He found out where we lived and came one day threatening to shoot my dad and burn the house down, so we called the police. We told them as much as we could without incriminating her. That's when my parents got her the house. He went to prison for 6 months. Rehab for a year, I think. About 3 years ago, she had an argument with mum and dad and she stopped me, my sister and mum from seeing the kids. Turns out she had started seeing him again. They found out because they went in and there were holes in the walls, doors, and the letterbox and knocker had been ripped off the front door. Do you know if he's been caught for similar acts and locked up? If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's probably still a duck 20 years later. He may still be targeting underage children, teens. Might not be the kind of answer you were looking for. A teenaged boy's hand, some skin and muscle, aka degloved. I was visiting my folks when the kids came up to the front door, knocked several times and then promptly collapsed. He'd been riding a go-kart at full speed when the chain broke, wrapping itself around his wrist. The poor kid survived, but totally lost his hand, amputated. 14, maybe 15 years old. The exposed finger bones of a living, breathing child. That's definitely not something you are ever supposed to see. I come from sort of a bad town. There's a drug trade and quite a bit of youth gangs. But it's not too unsafe. If you keep your head down and know where not to go, you'll be fine. As a kid, however, I was loved exploring different areas and just wandering about. So I did get into a bit of trouble every now and then. The one that stands out, however, is when I decided to go down an abandoned road just to see what's up. The road was unsurprisingly quiet, so I just continued down it. However, I heard people shouting in one building, and as a very clever small 11-year-old girl, I decided to go see what's up. Inside there was a trio of boys around 16 or 17 and they were arguing over a deal that's gone wrong, and one of them takes out a gun and shoots one of the others in the shoulder. I have no idea if that guy survived or if they knew I was there, but I got the fuck away as fast as I could. Probably not the most wild story here, but 11-year-old me was definitely not supposed to be there or see that. I was 12. Was trying to make my BMX bike into a long forked chopper style bike. There was an old man down the road that welded as a business. I had dropped my bike off for some welding on my forks. Went back several days later to pick up my bike. Walked into his shop just as another man pulled an enormous bag of weed out of a duffel bag. They both stopped and just stood staring at me for a moment. I turned around and noped the fuck out of there. A guy who was being chased by police for breaking into a home and stealing a ton of stuff and a car. He hid next door. We made eye contact as he went inside. I am on mobile, so sorry up front. My first vacation with my family as a kid. Probably 03 or 04. We go to Wisconsin Dells. Towards the end of the trip I remember hearing an ambulance siren and it's getting closer and closer. Next thing I know, my mom is telling me to close my eyes. And being a 3 or 4 year old, I didn't listen. I saw the EMTs and lifeguards on top of a girl my age at the time, 3 or 4, and rushing her to the ambulance. She ended up not being able to be resuscitated. She had gone off the cliff in a pool that was 2 featuring, and sunk to the bottom of a 9 featuring part. This was right next to where we were. TLDR. First vacation ever as a little kid. See a little girl drown in the pool within 20 featuring of me. Edit. This occurred at the Polynesian Resort. Edit 2. My most upvoted comment is about a child's death. I think about from time to time and it makes me enjoy life more and more because that easily could have been any child there that day. Was a little kid, went looking for something in the house, opened a closet in the basement that I usually never looked into and found a huge stack of Christmas presents. Walked over to them and saw they all said from Santa. What the fuck? Why would Santa deliver presents 2 weeks early? And why would he leave them in the basement closet? Oh. Since the world population has vastly increased, it has placed huge time constraints on Father Christmas's delivery schedule. He has arranged a rota system whereby he drops off a percentage of presents during the fortnight before Christmas Eve. The adults are in on this, but not all of them have invested in suitable, secure storage yet. I used to work on oil rigs, and one stormy night I had to go to the cellar deck, the lowest level of the rig, to do a repair, and I caught the safety officer and the production supervisor opening a separator valve and emptying the contents, oily water, straight into the sea. They obviously chose a winter stormy night to do this so that by morning the oil would be elsewhere. My wife and I vacationed to London a couple years ago. After dinner, we decided to go try out some local pubs because, you know, London. We didn't want to go to the tourist trap places, so we followed around some locals. It was about 11 PM when we got to the last pub. Was a nice looking place with a younger crowd. I really had to pee, but I couldn't find a restroom anywhere. I walked up to the guy working the front door and asked him where the restroom was. He looked at me kinda funny and said, "Upstairs. First door on your left." I thanked him and scurried back into the bar. The staircase was in the back left corner, blocked by a table. I found it odd. I had to ask the group sitting at the table to move to let me slide by. They thought it was strange too. By the looks on their faces, you could tell that these stairs weren't meant to be used. But I had been drinking and my bladder was about to bust. As I reached the next floor, there's a long hallway with about 5 doors. The bouncer had told me it was the first door on the left, so I tried it. Nope, it was a dark room with empty kegs. Pretty normal. Maybe he meant the right door. Nope, dark room with extra supplies. I started to wonder if I was too drunk to follow directions. But then I noticed that I could see light under the door at the end of the hallway. That must be the bathroom, or so I thought. I open up the door to find a group of people in very sharp business attire seated around an oval table. They were clearly having a meeting of some sort, with their laptops out. They were incredibly surprised to see me. They all froze in place and we all looked at each other for a good 15-30 seconds. Finally, one of the guys says, "What the hell are you doing, mate?" I replied, "I'm just looking for the bathroom. The door guy told me it was up here." They all looked a little confused, but the guy responded, "We don't have a restroom in this building. Now please leave." I apologized and closed the door, then headed back down the staircase confused as hell. The good news was that my urge to pee went away. I slid past the group at the table and returned to my wife, who had ordered some fish and chips, and told her all about what happened. We both agreed it was strange, but ordered another round and thought nothing of it. About 5 minutes later, I noticed the guy in the very nice looking suit come down the same stairs. He saw me, then went to the security guy at the front and said something to him, then pointed at me. I almost shit myself. The bouncer walks up to me and says, "You guys have to leave." I told him that I had not paid my tab yet, and he said not to worry about. Just go ahead and leave. I obliged. My wife and I stand outside of the bar while we wait for our Uber to take us back to our hotel. The bouncer is sitting there just staring at us. It was a very awkward 5-minute wait. When our Uber gets there, the bouncer says in a very Jamaican accent, "You all have a very good night," followed by a very loud laugh. To this day, one of the weirdest events of my life. Why were they having a business meeting at 11 PM in a pub on a Saturday night? Why did the bouncer tell me to go upstairs when he knew there was no bathroom? Why did they kick us out afterwards? Why did the bouncer creepily laugh at us? We have no idea what happened, but we love to tell this story and see what everyone's theories are. Edit. I can't remember what the name of the place was, but I did find a picture of the fish and chips we ordered. Imgur webpage. There's a receipt on the table. Maybe someone can figure out the name of the establishment from that, or recognize one of the plates. Edit number 2. I found the Uber receipts. Imgur webpage. But I can't figure out London addresses. Lol. If anyone could help out, that'd be greatly appreciated. Edit number 3. I'm now 99.99% sure that the bar is this place, the Victoria, London 1 Lower Belgrave St. Belgravia. Restaurant reviews and phone number. TripAdvisor webpage. Thank you to the Redditor who commented to help me find it, but deleted their comment. Probably a wise move. Lol. I guess in this establishment, restroom was code for whatever this was actually used for. Possibly, we don't use the word restroom in the UK, so it may have been a dog whistle to those in the know. My stepmom's lover. My sister was a bit of a snoop and had read some very racy emails between my stepmom and this man Paul. They were sexual and my god they were graphic. Paul was a co-worker who worked with my stepmom and my dad. As you see, my dad owns the family business where he met and cheated on my mom with. My stepmom and Paul works there too. My sister and I also worked there during summers throughout the years and had met Paul. We show up to my dad's unexpected during the day to borrow a cooler for the long weekend. You can see the back patio from the driveway and there's some dude straight up kicking it, feet up on our outdoor couch as our stepmom comes through the back door, rather scantily clad carrying drinks, giggling away. She sees us and the look of terror, so we walk up and she introduces this man as Bill. Mind you, we've literally met this guy many times before as Paul. She makes some lame excuse that they too were just picking up something from the house. We knew, they knew, and yet we just had an awkward standoff, grabbed the cooler and left. Shit was already awkward before with her, but that really solidified it. Share the house with my parents. Got a letter from my ISP for illegal downloading. The letter named the title. It was gangbang porn. Had to tell my 70-year-old dad that I knew, and how to find free porn online. Did you also check if your neighbor or your friend was not using your Wi-Fi to download that thingy? My dad watched all kinds of gross porn and I was constantly being blamed for it being in the history even when I was at college. My brother-in-law told them about war driving, Wikipedia webpage, and how sometimes viruses will open up a VPN tunnel to use your internet service for illicit purposes. Both are technically true, but obviously nobody's going to go through that much effort to watch free porn. But it gave my mom enough plausible deniability for peace of mind. It's not my dad being a human, it's those nasty hackers. So your 70-year-old dad knew how to download and use a torrent client to illegally download porn, but he couldn't figure out how to Google free porn. I was living in San Marcos, TX in early 2003. My boyfriend at the time and I were heading home from a party around 2 or 3 AM when we get stopped at a train crossing, and a super long train is going by. I mean, we sat there for a solid 15 minutes watching this train go by. Some of the cars had the slats or cage walls, so you could see what was in the cars when they were backlit by the street lights. We could clearly make out that a large amount of military equipment was being moved down to the coast, edit, or possibly an airfield. Within a month or so, it was publicly announced that the US was invading Iraq. Coming back home after spending a night to my friend's house and seeing my parents having sex in my room. Edit, my first comment on Reddit and got 1k plus upvotes. Wow. Thank you for silver gold, kind stranger. Light turns on. Dad looking at mom in surprise. What are you doing in Thur Angel 81's room? I was definitely not supposed to see every single friend of mine together, saying I was a bad person, and that they should all cut contact with me. I can't say that day was very fun. Edit. This was a week or so before the first day of freshman year, so I didn't have to see any of them, save one who ended up going to the same high school. I saw my mom crying. She had just seen a news broadcast where one of her military friends had been killed by an IED. I was about 8, and I didn't know what to do. Back in 2012ish I ran a food truck in Chicago. Chicago apparently let the Restaurant Association practically write the food truck ordinance. The ordinance stated that trucks could only be parked for a total of 2 hours at a time. We needed more time than that to make the sales we needed to be profitable. My boss had a few restaurants and the Restaurant Association wanted him as a member, so we got to sit in on a meeting and make our case about the parking time. During this meeting they were having a discussion about how to kill the new minimum wage laws that were being discussed. It was like I was seeing the elite discuss how to keep the common people down, and made me so incredibly angry. We had a guy commit suicide at work. As a maintenance shift leader, they assigned me to move out about 1,000 feet from where it happened and block off the path where the in-plant vehicle would take him from the incident to the waiting ambulance. As the car passed by, the blanket that was covering him blew off and I saw his body there on the cart with a gunshot wound to the head. Such a scary and sad moment. Doing retail PC repair, I found a massive folder of CP on a customer's laptop. Called the cops. State police and FBI were there within 30 minutes. He ended up getting like 20 years. When I was 18 years of age, I went downstairs to the site of my grandparents having sex on the couch. Apparently I have been very quiet upstairs and they thought no one was at home. My normally frail 75-year-old grandfather was porking my 68-year-old grandmother with the vigor of a teenage jock on steroids. I was so impressed at the technique of my grandfather and watched him jackrabbit my grandmother and her flapping tits until his eye caught my gaping mouth on the mirror across the room. That dirty old bird paused, winked at me and continued his morning exercise. You go grandpappy, you go. My parents' search history, not the pleasant things you would like to see. Mother's dildo age 14. Edit. Mother's crusty dildo age 14. Edit 2. I was 14. The dildo could have been any age. Probably old judging by the build up. I was 8 and staying night at my best buddy's place next door, which I did very often. One morning I woke up early to the sound of the shower and our door to the hallway was wide open. My friend's mom came out of the shower completely naked and took a while rummaging through the towel closet, which was in plain view. My young innocent mind was in shock the whole day. I saw absolutely everything and it was fantastic. My mom's blog posts about how she was cheating on my dad and asking for advice on whether or not she should leave him and how. I was in a church in France once and it was pretty empty, very rundown and had bullet holes in the walls, presumably from WW2. Anyways, on the right hand side of the church there was a wooden floorboard covered up by carpets etc. Curiosity got the better of my brother and he lifted it to find a passageway down to a tomb, with skeletons in coffins without lids on them. I recently looked at the photos we took of it and it's truly creepy. My 65-year-old mother getting out of her wheelchair and walking around like it was nothing. She'd been wheelchair bound for 5 years at that point. I'd had my suspicions, but had talked myself out of them because that was ridiculous. Who would pretend to be wheelchair bound just for the attention? My teacher's porn. We found out she had an adult industry background and actually found something. My principal bribed off an inspector and he saw me see him. We made eye contact for 10 seconds and I didn't say anything. No one knows. Edit. People are saying this is fake. Bribes are something natural in Romania and I did exaggerate with the 10 seconds lol, we did make eye contact. What you guys need to understand is that this is happening in a third world country in a school in which most of the kids have a record. I am pretty smart, but don't get me wrong, the school and class I was in was a bad one. I was the smartest of the stupidest, you can say. My 9. That was my grade. Would have been a 5 or 6 in another school. But my grades did inflate a bit. From 8.23 to 9.47. Don't believe if you don't want, but I am telling you all I know. Man, that is one of those moments that you could have used to your advantage. I know what you did last period's type. Sexually explicit messages on my fiance's phone to another man. Edit. As I stated below, I did end up going through with the wedding. I know not everyone commenting on this thread would have done the same thing, but let me explain something to you. Cheating is one of the worst things you can do to someone, and I know after she did it she no longer deserved my love. I know my self-worth. I'm not stupid. But I don't believe cheating is past forgiveness. It took me a long time to forgive her, but she fought tooth and nail to show me that her mistake was forever in the past. We've been married 3 years now and life really couldn't be better. My team lead at my last job uploaded a year in review on Snapchat on Nye. In the middle of all the memories was her masturbating with a giant purple dildo. It was up for about 30 seconds and then it was gone. I had a hard time looking her in the eye at work the next day. When I was 17, my friend lent me her phone to see her pictures. She forgot the nudes she had taken for draw herself. I had a crush on her, so I couldn't ignore them and just said wow. She was by my side so I could saw her face turning red. Update. I had her phone because I was seeing pictures of a party we had days ago. I am sorry to disappoint you, but nothing happened. I just gave her back the phone. In that moment she was in a relationship, and months after I tried but was in the friend zone. We are still friends and both have relationships. With different persons, not each other. Tell me the story. What happened next since she was your crush? Did you ask her out later? I am a criminal defense attorney. I am keeping some of the numbers fuzzy even though this case is already done and I can't talk about it. One of my clients was picked up for drug trafficking and was guilty as hell. But in order to help himself out, successfully set up a drug bust on a much bigger dealer. The district attorney's office had been slow to act on the case and we could not figure out why. Either me from asking directly or him while sitting in jail. I had an idea, but no one would confirm what I thought was going on. I couldn't go and point blank ask around other defense attorneys, including the one for the guy who my client busted, because my client was a confidential informant. CI, on the case. Were the other guy's case to go to trial, my client would have to testify for the state. I learned what the hell was going on while I was interviewing a different client in jail. I was sitting in the public site talking to my client over a phone. It just so happened, a few feet away from me, in the private attorney room was the defense attorney and the guy my client had busted, and they were both super pissed at each other. There is this thing called attorney-client privilege. The idea is that anything you say in private with your attorney is supposed to stay secret. But those attorney interview rooms are not soundproofed. And guess what? If you're going to be shouting at your client, your conversation suddenly isn't going to be privileged. Some things I learned. The defense attorney had no idea who my client was. And for whatever reason his client was not giving up the name of my client to him. Might have been some trust issues there. They had wildly different opinions on the possible success of the case. Defense attorney's words: "If you take this to trial and the CI says what is in this report, you're fucked." The state had not disclosed to me said report. They had until the end of that week to make a decision about the case. I finished up my interview with my client while taking notes on both cases, as they were still in the middle of their argument. So in one broad stroke, all because of a frayed or broken attorney-client relationship that spilled out into me being able to hear a few feet away, I learned pretty much all of the information the district attorney's office had refused to tell me and why everyone had been dragging their feet. Soon after, I was able to use the information I received to resolve my own case. TLDR. My client was facing at least 8 years in jail for drug trafficking, in part because of a privileged conversation I overheard due to an attorney and his client screaming at each other. I got his sentence reduced to little over a year. 16 years old me working at a pizza shop. Walked into the back office to find two head managers of different stores fucking on the large meeting table. I ate my lunch there sometimes, never after that. I opened a deep freezer and saw a severed German Shepherd's head. I worked at a university animal research hospital. I knew better than to look in there. Worst fear confirmed. Also saw a window into the digestive system of a cow, and dead horse lifted by forklift into a truck for disposal. I do kind of wish I could unsee all of that. Grew up with separated parents and my mother worked her ass off to provide us with a lifestyle we definitely didn't deserve. 60+ hours every week while my siblings and I fought constantly, verbally and physically. One Christmas we wanted a really expensive toy. Well, we went on a scavenger hunt to find it, and we did. As soon as we told her, she broke down in tears. I'll never forget the pure regret I felt in that moment. I felt like an absolute shithead and still do. One day I'm going to provide my mother with everything she deserves and more, and make sure she never has to lift her finger when she retires. Just recently I've had to use one of my close relatives' phone as mine broke. All good until I found pictures of her boobs, just after plastic surgery, and X200B. Edit. To those who are shaming me for going through her photos, here's a more in-depth description of my situation. And X200B. So my Google Pixel, Android, broke. I had no phone for a while until she offered me her old iPhone 7, iOS. I was like, yeah, cool. It was really nice of her. I appreciated it. I logged in on my iCloud or whatever it's called and basically she had nothing on the phone, so I thought it had been cleared. I also thought that if I logged in with my Apple ID, I wouldn't see any of her photos. Well, was I wrong? The same day there was an ambulance helicopter that landed in a park nearby, so I record it, go home, watch it, then I am like, ooh, dog pictures. And I scrolled through them and basically there it was. I know even if they were dog pictures I should have realized that they were her photos, but I really did not expect to see that. It was like 3-4 pictures of her dog, then that. The doctors and nurses make you take pictures of the healing process when you get plastic surgery, to make sure there's no complications or issues. I walked in on my uncle and his lady friend shooting heroin. I was 8. Still can't unsee it. My first job at 19. I saw the CFO banging the CMO's wife after work. It was 8 PM and nobody can get on their floor, except it, and the man has glass walls with that gel that can be switched on to de-transparent the glass, but he had it off. He was fucking the ever-loving dog shit out this woman. Then he finished on her face and looked up and saw me just standing there like, whelp. In the next few weeks my pay miraculously raised to X and I had gotten like 4 weeks vacation days. Was great while it lasted. During a long car journey, me and my family stopped off at a McDonald's. My parents sat down after we ordered and I needed the bathroom, so I walk into the bathroom and these teenagers, around 16, giving each other bags of powder, probably like coke, and exchanging money. I get a stern look from one and just run out, pretty sketchy LMAO. My uncle accidentally showed me a picture of my dead grandfather while we were at an amusement park. Definitely wasn't supposed to see that. A dude taking a shit near a bush right in the center of the city. The problem was that it was his face who was towards the bush. When I was 14, my parents divorced. My father moved us to lower middle class area and he began hitting the bottle. Soon he was no longer sleeping at home and it was pretty much me alone every night. I started rebelling, smoking the Mary Jean and hanging out with a little crew of hoodlums. One random Thursday night, my newfound hoodlum friends and I all snuck out at about 1 AM to go smoke weed in front of a gas station and see if we could talk someone into buying us some beer. As we were standing outside, where we shouldn't be, doing things we shouldn't be, we were laughing and enjoying the early morning. We felt grown up. Nothing could touch us that night. An older grey truck screeches around the corner and stops dead in the middle of the street. A man in his late 20s jumps out. He looks angry. He turns to face a newer white truck and throws his hands in the air. He looks like a working man. Jeans and a flannel type shirt. From the new truck, a younger white male in his early 20s pops his head out the window and screams "fuck you." He puts his head back into the window and starts revving the truck loudly, full RPM. A young white female in the passenger side screams a deathly scream "no." He floors it, running over the Hispanic male. What I remember most is the man's head hitting the hard street asphalt and bouncing back up. The truck seemed to have also caught his arm in the tire, causing it to bend all the way around. My heart instantly sank in my chest as I knew in that moment that I was not grown. But in retrospect, that was the night I grew up. I turned to my friends in shock. They all had already started running except for one. The oldest of the neighborhood mob, an 18-year-old who worked at Burger King on weekends. He ran to the body. I followed. My first instinct was we must help this man, so I figured he was running to provide aid. I had to man up. I had to help. Only he wasn't running to his aid. He ran to him, laughed in this dying man's face, and took his wallet and told me to run. I stood in shock. Everything was happening so fast I couldn't react. I couldn't move. I kept saying why, how, and yet I wasn't saying anything. I stood over the man for a few minutes and I finally realized he was saying something in Spanish. He was saying, "Please God, don't let me die. Please forgive me, God. Please God, give me mercy. God, I don't deserve to die like this," over and over and over. I kneeled down and told him, "I'm sorry, I'm just a kid. I'm so sorry, sir. Please don't die. Police are coming." And he was moving his head side to side in wincing pain. He wasn't even acknowledging that I was there. It was as if he was talking to God directly, pleading with him. I wasn't even there to him. The sirens were coming from a distance now. They would be there at any moment. I ran to the gas station and told the clerk it was a white newish truck they muse have left this country bar around the corner. The man yelled, "Go home, kid," and so I ran home. I tucked myself into a ball and cried until morning. I didn't sleep a second. The next day I moved to my mother's, never talking to those pieces of shit again. 23 years later, I can still hear his voice. I can still see his pain. I cannot forgive myself for that night. So many things I could have done. A real man could have done. But I was a kid and I wasn't supposed to have been there and seen that. I used to do fire safety equipment inspection, installation and sales too. I've only told my family this and like my closest friends' brothers. I was doing an inspection for fire extinguishers in a funeral home, and this usually involves me inspecting the entire facility. Power plants were the best days. Just tons of walking and getting to see some pretty cool stuff when I worked for this company. But when I had to go to this funeral home, which I won't mention for good reason, I seriously had nightmares after that day. Walking with the owner, and full disclosure, working with the dead can tend to leave some people's communication skills with the living a bit off, I'd say. He was taking me room by room and explaining how he got into the business, etc. And then it happened. We walked in a room and a poor elderly woman was almost like floating in water due to rigor mortis, completely nude, having been recently worked on, and she just was floating on the table. Her arms and feet literally were at different heights lifted in the air. Her head even was as if she were attempting to sit up. The owner apologized, but what could you really say to someone after something like that happens? Attending funerals were never really hard for me. I'm 26 now, was 23 then. The deceased were clothed, but of course it wasn't the same. But this was just horribly different for me. I'm not fond of going to funerals now. I tend to not peer into the casket anymore. I kid you not, the woman was in my dreams that following night. I can still see her and picture the entire day in my mind. I saw my principal hit a student. He told me if I tell a soul, he would have me expelled. The kid and I went to his parents, who are lawyers. 1 week later, boom. No more misses. Zidjaliwich. I was in 1st grade. That's why it was considered a big deal. I also saw my grandparents have sex one time. Probably more shocking than the other one I told. My now ex-boyfriend's YouTube history, which contained dozens of videos of young girls doing gymnastics routines, wearing nothing but bikinis or the tiny things they wear for competitions. Didn't think much of it until I saw the expression on his face and the shade of red his skin was. Apparently he only got hard but never came. Yay right. My stepdad dancing around in my mom's red thong underwear. Their door was open and I went into the kitchen for something, but they didn't hear me walk down the hall. Red underwear is no longer considered sexy in my eye. Co-worker's sex tape. Several actually. One of the perks of being the almighty it guy. I don't watch them any longer than was needed to identify it as fitting the criteria that it wasn't supposed to be there. But I've gotta say, when one starts with a tongue in a butt, well, the damage is done. To the people of Reddit who don't work in it, please don't use corporate servers to back up your private sex tapes. This will probably get buried, but whatever. I was around 12 and my sister, 5.5 years my senior, got a new cell phone and gave me her old one. Neglected to delete anything on the device. That is how I saw her boyfriend's gigantic penis. I'm talking like forearm size. There were MMS photos and photos saved on the device itself. And being pre-smartphone days, I had to open each photo in order to delete it. Scarred for life. I used to live in a city built around the Middle Age. Perugia. You can look it up. And people who live in that kind of cities know that they have a lot of narrow alleys where it's very unusual to see somebody. It wasn't very late, and I passed in one of these alleys to go to the center. There were 3 men. 2 of them raced up, the third one who reached a pretty high hole in a wall, where he placed something. I'm not sure. They saw me and started mumbling something, so I acted like I didn't see anything. In my mind I was freaking out, and passed by like it was nothing. Luckily nothing happened. I saw this scene play out in Toronto and watched the guy get his head blown off. Toronto police sharpshooter was right to shoot hostage taker. Sui finds webpage. This is going to sound like a joke, but for real. And X200B. When I was a kid, I would say like 8 or 9. It was Christmas morning. I was so hyped. I think this was the year of the N64 release and I just knew I was going to get one. So to say the least, I couldn't sleep. It was the middle of the night and I wanted to sneak in there to look at the gifts. So I walked into the living room to see something that I can't forget. My mom on top of my dad just going at it. And X200B. I just look at them, not sure WTF is happening. And my dad peeks around mom and says to me, shouldn't you be asleep? Go back to bed. Santa hasn't come yet. And X200B. The adult me realizes that he didn't mean Santa hasn't arrived with gifts. My neighbor having an affair. I stayed home from school sick one day and thought it was odd the woman next door was home. Then her child's soccer coach showed up. All the houses on our street had giant picture windows in the front. I sat in my living room plainly seeing them walk around her living room naked. A few days later I tell my best friend. By the end of the day everyone in school is talking about it. I watched her daughter be told by her friends. I watched her fall apart as we waited for the bus home. Later that night the woman shows up at my house and corners me in my bedroom alone. For literally 45 minutes she crouched next to me as I laid in bed. Her face inches from mine demanding that I tell her I lied. I'm still not sure why. She knew I knew. I knew. Nobody was there to hear me lie to cover her ass. All I could remember thinking was wow. This woman is not only sleeping with her kid's coach, she's forcing a child to lie about it. First time I realized not every adult deserves respect. A few months later the soccer coach's wife finds a receipt for an expensive necklace. Sees cheating neighbor wearing it at a child's basketball game. A fist fight ensues. Divorces came shortly after. The neighbor ended up marrying the soccer coach. I felt bad. But I was in 5th grade. I had no idea how to process the information I had. To me it was a story about how I saw the hot mom next door naked, not something that would destroy marriages. TLDR. Saw neighbor banging kid's coach on a sick day. Ruined 2 bad marriages bragging to my friends about how I saw some boobs. The fact she cornered you, a child, that's not hers, alone is so whack. My dad's face as he was listing off all the friends that died during Vietnam. He never talks about it because of PTSD. He's talked to my mom a few times when they are alone. This time I was a teenager coming in to borrow the car keys. I just walked right in cause the door was open. Then I realized my dad was reciting names. I looked over and saw the pure anguish on his face. Tears streaming. I realized I had overstepped and my mom threw me the keys. My mom told me that later he started reciting names again and went for over 20 minutes, and this is on top of what he said before. My dad's an asshole, but I know he loves me. I still love him despite giant personality flaws. I wouldn't wish the pain I saw on his face upon anyone in the world. If I feel comfortable enough I share this with people when they ask me why I don't support the USA's wars. I'm tired of our young men going out getting killed, or mutilated, or mental health problems because they think they are defending their country and loved ones. Then they come back broken, pleading, and in need of the care that was promised them. And that is a real crapshoot. I'm tired of old rich men sending out poor, idealistic, young men to die for them so they can get richer. I'm tired of the constant warmongering that's going on. I'm tired of families being torn apart, in my country and others. I'm sick and tired of that anguished face forever burned into my memory. Last thing. I hate Richard Nixon. Sound weird for someone that died when I was a kid. Mostly because he made the Vietnam peace talks crash and burn because he wanted the political clout that would come with stopping a war. Well, He sure killed those peace talks, and my dad was forced to fly to Vietnam the next year. I know my dad would have lived a much better life if he hasn't spent 2 years in that hell, and our family life growing up would have been a lot better without all the PTSD moments, especially since no one knew what was causing my dad to freak out, not even he himself. If you read all this, I apologize for my ranting. Been needing to get that off my chest for a while. Edit. Thank you for the gold. I'm glad it's on a post so heartfelt and important to me. Never apologize for that stuff. It's impacted your life as well, and you have the right to have the opinions you do. I hope you have peace and that your father found some as well. Thank you for sharing your pain with us. PTSD can take a lot away from people, and yet so many people think it's bullshit. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your strength to say the things you feel. Eater. Thank you for the silver, kind stranger. My father came back from 2 tours in Vietnam, but I lost my father to the war. My mother tells me that prior to leaving he was always surrounded by friends, the life of the party. After he came back he never had a single adult friend of his own. And for the last 20 years Agent Orange has wormed its way through his body, taking him down piece by piece. Before the war, the blue-eyed white boy from the Midwest had 2 best friends. A black man from Chicago and a second-generation Mexican kid from Texas. After, he's a bitter, angry racist whose worldview comes down to us versus them. I think he has to hang on to the hatred, because the things he was made to do are so horrible that not having a reason for them is too terrifying. But for me, I see very clearly the evil and corruption behind America's endless military adventures. Small groups of elites profit from the arms sales. The military is far too often just a tool protecting markets and profits. No matter the destruction and death, both foreign and domestic. Poor men and women, impoverished by a rigged system with accelerating benefits for the very few at the top, are offered a small ray of light in the military. Stability, security, and honor. These good people give everything for a seemingly righteous cause. But those of us who see the broken wreckage on the other side know there is nothing but boundless contempt for their sacrifices from the elites. You are worthless now to their constant, cancerous campaign of greed and glorification. They are already on to the next war and the next batch of human meat. My parents asked me to take the trash out. I was in the middle of watching a movie with a friend, so I told them I'll do it afterwards. They were okay with that. About an hour later the movie is over and I get up to go into the kitchen to take the trash out. We have a door leading directly into the kitchen, but that corner had stuff standing there in it and was really narrow, so everyone walked through the living room and around the corner into the kitchen, which took a couple seconds longer, but was easier. I walk into the living room and my mom is sitting topless on top of my dad, both of them shocked, and my mom quickly gets off and puts her shirt back on. I pretended not to see anything and walked into the kitchen. I squeezed through the kitchen door afterwards and couldn't look them in the eyes the next day. It was about 9:30 p.m. Anyone could have walked in there at any time and they knew I was gonna take the trash out. I have no idea what they were thinking. Ran out clean socks. Decided to borrow a pair off my dad. Do not under any circumstances go into your dad's sock drawer, people. The VP of the company I used to work for was in town staying at a local hotel. I saw him dropping off a low-level manager to work very early in the morning. Deg. Edit. They are both married with kids. Saw some guy hang himself upon a tree deep in the forest, and was so freaked out and just stood and watched till it was over. Stills gives me nightmares 15 years later. OMG. Is the dog okay? I've seen dogs bump into things really hard, but I never saw one vibrate as a result. After the 11th of September, I lived in apartments in New Jersey and one of my neighbors was a suspect, so one morning around 4 a.m. I was on my way to a morning run, and when I opened the front door to my apartment to leave, there had to be 25 law enforcement officials, Secret Service, FBI, you name it. I walked directly into their apprehension of the guy and saw weapons I never knew existed. As a former Marine, I'm pretty decent with knowing weapons, plus I am an enthusiast. They had chrome rifles with some weird wires I had never seen before and still haven't. I would go as far as say, they weren't really rifles. There wasn't a magazine or any type of cartridge. After they got their guy, who turned out being one of the guys involved, every law enforcement agent put their weapons in a weird case and single file waited by a black van and deposited them. Funny thing is, I had a conversation with the dude's son in the 10th of September because he was supposed to fly back to Jordan where his son lived, and the kid laughed and said, "I would never fly tomorrow." In hindsight, the kid knew. Forgot to mention, they knew my name as soon as I opened the door. One radioed in that I was awake and leaving. They didn't bother me, but they were absolutely trying to hide those weapons. I was 5 years old and just doing regular old 5-year-old ass Lord 666 stuff, and for some reason I opened the trunk to my mom's car. It was a couple of weeks before Christmas, and to my complete and total cowbungerized emoji surprise, I discover packages of all 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figures. I was so excited and I couldn't contain myself, and I didn't know what to do, so I ran inside with my dumb 5-year-old face that couldn't stop grinning and said very cool, very nonchalantly, "Mom, what's in the trunk of your car?" "Mom, did you look in the trunk of my car?" "Me, no, I didn't look in the trunk of your car." "Mom, yes you did, or else you wouldn't be asking me about it." "Me, no Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't look in the trunk of your car, I promise." "Mom, yes you didn't, now you're lying to me. You know I have Christmas presents in the trunk of the car, but you're not getting them now because you lied to me." Now I'll be honest, it took a good deal of wheeling and yelling. Even had to call in a few favors from the man upstairs, which I absolutely hated doing, especially back then. But come Christmas morning, I was the proud sensei of 4 at the fuck-ass Ninja Turtles. Same here. Few days ago my friend sent me on Messenger nudes. Someone hacked her account, but don't know how that hacker got nudes from her. My parents doing the thing. Fortunately, I didn't see any of their genitals. My dad got mad, so he shut the door and locked it. I cried and hid under my bed. A few minutes later they got dressed and my mom and a maid tried dragging me out. To make me forget about it, my dad gave us money to watch a movie. I certainly haven't forgotten, and I was probably about 7 at the time. A maid? How many maids did you have? And what are they doing just hanging around while your folks are knocking boots? I remember walking in on mine. I asked them what they were doing and my mom said they'd tell me when I'm 16. I knew pretty soon after what they were doing, and they didn't tell me when I was 16. Thank God. I also was about 7. I woke from sleep at a hotel in Santa Fe. Looking out my window, I saw 2 men with military haircuts and 2 women who looked to be their girlfriends. The girlfriends headed into the hotel with their bags, and the 2 guys were talking. Once the women were out of sight, one guy grabbed the other by the back of the neck and pulled him in for a really intimate kiss. They kissed for a bit, and then one of them got down on his knees and gave the other man a pretty good time from the looks of things. After they were done, they got up and walked close but increasingly distant physically from each other into the hotel. It made me real sad. It seemed like they wanted to be together, but couldn't given the confines of culture and expectation. This is a long one, so get ready. She's been married to my stepfather for basically my whole life. She's really religious. Hates gays. You know the gist of it. Anyways, a few years back, I caught her sending hearts to this one person and being all lovey-dovey. When I asked her who it was, she simply replied that it was one of her female friends, although she was never as affectionate with her other acquaintances as she was with this person. I was suspicious, so I told my stepsister about it. We had no clue. My mother and stepfather didn't work and had to stick to a tight budget, so on winter days me and my stepsister would sleep in the living room. When we would, they'd take a few sponges and put them on the floor and basically sleep on them. Always found it weird personally, but I never questioned it myself. My little brother would sleep beside my mom, and one time I sneaked beside him while my mom wasn't looking. She had this iPod that she used for minor things, but never really for talking to anyone, except for that person I mentioned earlier. So, as a curious kid, I tried to make out the messages she was sending on the screen without my bad vision getting in the way. The only few words I seemed to make out were this person suggesting them making out and my mom being okay with it. I was disgusted and shocked. I never told her what I saw, and I honestly don't even think I'd like to. Also, she still talks to that person. I saw a video message on her phone when it was unlocked from them and it was a dude. A man. She was talking to a guy while being married and having 4 children to take care of. Wow. Parents having sex. Most of my female friends' boobs when they bent over not wearing a bra. My very grown sister naked, the neighbor's wife naked, another neighbor's daughter banging her BF out in the yard in the cover of Nightfall. Myself. Almost completing college. The shortfalls of different cultures and the ways of which some systems are designed to fail because of their inability to adapt to solving modern day problems as opposed to their effectiveness that were limited to past generations. At a young age, I had to learn to be tough because I grew up in a neighbor surrounded by drugs and heavy drinking. My parents were fighting a lot, but this isn't around my parents. I was sitting in the lounge room, looking out the window while my parents were fighting. My younger sister was crying but you could barely hear her because of the shouting. I noticed a figure dressed in black walk down my street. I thought nothing of it until I saw him pull out a bag of cocaine and add another drug. I didn't realize it was LSD at the time. To the bag and shake it. He then waited out the front of my house. I watched as another guy came up in all black as well. Take the bag and give the other dude money. The next day at school a kid was crying in class because her mother had passed away from a drug overdose. I was 5 when this happened. Edit. I believe it was cocaine due to the number of cocaine dealers in my area. My grandparents would come over and talk about the drugs in the area and cocaine was constantly brought up. And I believe it was LSD because of how the kid said her mother was speaking to nothing and how mommy's eyes were crazy. I also would like to say that the kid talked about pills I wasn't allowed to touch. I believe that the drugs got to her head and she killed herself with the pills. Hence the drug overdose. I'm sorry I didn't write that in the first place and I'm sorry for the confusion by those who were misguided in the wrong direction. I don't think an LSD cocaine mix was what caused this lady's overdose.